Hi, welcome back to Element 14 Presents. I'm Katie, and in today's episode I'm going to do another project with the Raspberry Pi build hat and Lego. So my first project for the channel was a Lego Raspberry Pi camera that was using the Raspberry Pi, the camera sensor, and building it into a Lego outside frame case to make a working Lego camera. Check that out if you haven't seen it. Then when the Raspberry Pi build hat came out, I did a project using that and a Spike Prime set to display the weather forecast from an API. But then I wanted to do another project. I wanted to take it up a level, make it a bit harder. So when I was looking for that project, I spotted in the compatibility sheet that listed those motors, there was a train motor. That sparked my interest. So I'm going to make a Raspberry Pi controlled Lego train. Let's get started. We've got a lot of Lego in our house, but from when the children were younger, we've also got a lot of Duplo. This is the Duplo train. Whereas the Lego trains will break into hundreds of pieces, the Duplo train goes to 2 pieces, well 3 if you want to include the roof. And it's just been designed for smaller hands, whereas the Lego train needs you to control it from a separate controller or a phone or tablet app. The Duplo train can be controlled by an app, but it can also be controlled by these coloured tiles. It has a colour sensor here in the bottom, and when it picks up the tiles it can do all sorts of things. So these ones, that one, it will make sound effects that it's taking on water because it's a steam train. That one, it will stop, so you can put it at a station platform and the train will stop ready for the people to get on. And that one will change direction, so you could have it at the end of like a buffer, so it won't crash, it will carry on in the other direction. So the train, it's quite hard to show this because it's got all sorts of sensors for safety, so you can start it going, but as soon as it realises it's been picked up, it stops the wheels. So let's have a look at it running on my table. I'm going to put a stop one to stop it crashing into the barriers. Let's put a water one here. So if I push the train along to go, it gets to the water, it stops, takes on water, carries on until it sees the stop and stops before it hits the buffers. Now if I take the water one out and I change it for this green one and push it, okay, it'll detect the green one and change direction and stop. So yeah, I really like how this Duplo train's controlled like that with the colour blocks. But as far as I'm aware, I've never seen a Lego train controlled in the same way as the Duplo train. Specifically not by Lego anyway. But with the build hat, I can plug a colour sensor into my Raspberry Pi and I can control the train motor from my Raspberry Pi. So putting those two bits of information together, I think I can make a Lego train that is controlled by coloured tiles. So that's the project I'm going to do today. I've got my parts, I've got my build hat and my Raspberry Pi 4. The build hat, in my previous project, I powered from the mains power supply that you can buy with the build hat. That's going to be a bit of a problem for a moving train. On the build hat it says you can power it with 7.2 volts to 8.5 volts. So I've got 6 rechargeable AA batteries in a battery holder. So they're 1.2 volts each. So 6 of those comes out at the 7.2 volts that it's asking for. And then on the end of this block, I've put a barrel socket that will plug straight into the build hat. So I've got that sorted. I've then got a colour sensor to plug into the Raspberry Pi. Now to plug into the build hat, I've got this Lego train motor which is compatible with the build hat. So this is part number 88011. Now I'm missing one thing. If I'm doing a Lego train, I need to start out with a train. I could have built one from scratch, but I think this is going to be a bit of a magical project. So in that case, I felt it needs a bit of a magical train. So I've got the Lego Hogwarts Express. So let's make this magical train really magically controlled. I've plugged in my Raspberry Pi. I'm going to do some checks, just test out that my idea is going to work. So originally I was going to use this colour sensor, which is the TCS3430. But when I first plugged it in and started having a play, I discovered that there's Arduino C libraries to use this, but I couldn't find any for Python or for CircuitPython. Now, I considered writing my own and getting it to work that way, but actually a much quicker solution was to use this Adafruit one. This is the Flora version. It's half the size of what that one was, about, maybe not quite half, but I think it'll be much easier to mount on the Lego train as well. So I've plugged that in. I've written myself this colour get program, so I can see what colours it's receiving, so I can write my code to react on those colours. I've made myself 2 sets of test Lego tracks with 3 different coloured Lego tiles on them. So if I now run this colour get code and hold it on each of the colours, I'll see what value it's returning. So with the red, with the green, blue, pink, purple and orange. So now I can use these colours. So this is my code I've written for the Lego train. So in this colour list I've added in those colours that I'm receiving for each of the 6 different colours. So these only have to be a rough because it's going to vary slightly. So this code, it sets up my train motor and the sensor. It has that list. I'm then starting it. If you press this button that I've got here, it will start the motor. If you press it again, it will stop. So I've got a stop and a start method. It then looks at the colour. I'm then looking at the colour I've obtained. I'm checking if it's within 10 of my colour list, so there's enough room for a bit of deviation on the colour it's receiving, but not enough that it's a completely different colour. And then pick up each colour. So red is going to stop the train, green is going to change the direction, blue's going to stop for 10 seconds. I might want to stop for longer than that, so I can change that value, but that's for stopping at a station, letting some minifigures board. Orange will make the speed increase. Purple will reset the speed back to its default of 50. Now the speed range is up to 100, so that's halfway. And pink will slow it down by 10%. Well, not 10% of the range, So that's my code. Now the red, green and blue are things that the Duplo train would do, but my orange, purple and pink are things that the Duplo one didn't do, so I'm adding that functionality in. So that's the main train built, but now we're on to the tender. So this is the part that I'm going to try to use the motorised part in. So I've got these extra bricks and hopefully I will come up with a solution to make this motorised. So that's got the width. Now we're going to need some extra bricks to pad out the length and to try to fill this gap. So now we've got roughly the same as this board that we're meant to build it onto. It's just 2 blocks longer, so I'll have to try to fill that in with some matching bricks so we can carry on with the build.
Do you like winning free stuff? Are you an electronics hobbyist? Do you like building cool projects and winning prizes for what you build? The Element 14 community presents Project 14, the member-driven destination where you decide on the challenge. You enter projects to win monthly prizes and you vote on the winners. What are you waiting for? Join the Element 14 community so you too can enter one of our contests or submit an idea for your own. Join now!
As we've just seen, this is the train build. So as I was doing it, I was making that bit of a modification so I could use the powered base for the tender. So now comes to fitting the electronics inside. So one problem I've got is that I've made that to fit the base, but it's still not quite big enough for the batteries. But with a bit of tweaking, I can slide the battery box in there, and then I'll feed the wire out and to the Pi in the back with the motor. Obviously I need a bit more height, so the Raspberry Pi, if I take the seats out in the carriage, that will fit in there, but again the carriage isn't quite high enough for me to be able to get the roof back on, and my sensor is going to go at the front of the train, so I'm thinking of putting it down there, but then I'll need to get these wires back. So there are some little holes here to the firebox of the train, so I'm thinking of mounting this under here to get the wires up without coming all over the front. I think I'll drill some little holes in that Lego brick there to pass them up. It's a fairly standard brick, so it'd be easily available to replace to put it back to its original form if you wanted to. And then there's a little channel behind this Hogwarts Castle sign, so I might change the wires on here to red to match the train, and then I can just feed these in and put my Hogwarts Castle sign back on. So I need to extend these wires, make them tie in with the train colours and route them up from the bottom there. But I think that'll be fairly straightforward. So I'm going to get on with that. For making these bits bigger, I've got a whole box of spare black and red Lego parts. So let's get modifying. I'm going to start off with the tender. That's our new tender with the batteries hidden inside. So now onto the carriage. And there's the carriage with the Raspberry Pi in it. Now onto the train. Ta-da! So that's our engine. There we go. So that's our Raspberry Pi in there, the colour sensor routed all the way from the front back, battery box in there with the rechargeable batteries in it. So that's all assembled now. I've got the batteries in there, and I've got my Raspberry Pi and the build hat in there. Now the only thing missing is my start-stop button. So I've been trying to think where to put this that will be sympathetic to the design. So I had a little play and discovered that this will fit perfectly on the top of this button, which is interesting. So there's one of those there, and there's this one. I also tried this is it a steam cone thing, but it's a bit loose. Now this is about that thick, so what I'm wondering is putting this on here, separating these two parts, and now if I get a flat spare disc and I put this on here and then stuck that on, I'll be able to press the button and it shouldn't look too odd. So what I'm going to do is connect some wires up to this that I can trail back along that groove, and I'm going to use some sugaru like I use for sticking the sensor on, and use that to stick this switch onto this plate. I'm going to let the sugaru set, then put that back on there, solder the wires in onto the Pi. The Pi's got all the code already on it and set to run on startup using crontab. But now once that's set, I can finish assembling it, and then we can have a look and test it and see how it all works. And here we have it, the finished Hogwarts Express train. So let's have a look at it in action. I can press the funnel and it will start up. It will go around the track, all the way around to the pink tile, where it will slow down for the approach into the station. It sees the blue tile and stops for 10 seconds. Then it carries on out of the station, sees the purple tile and goes back to normal speed. It'll see the orange tile here and actually goes faster back to the station, where it'll stop again for another 10 seconds. So I'm really pleased with this. It's working just like I wanted it to. And yeah, I think it's brilliant. So the other thing I can do is flick this switch here. It will go into the siding, it will slow right down as it approaches the red, and it will stop in the siding. Now if I press the funnel again to start it, it will go on to the green, where it will then change direction. It stops again at the red, where I can press the button and let it come back out. It's going quite slow because of the pink tile. It can see the orange tile and speed back up, come back round and stop in the station again. I'm really pleased with this. Yeah, like I said before, it's working really well. And I can press the funnel and I can stop it. I think this is a great build. I like Harry Potter. I think it's brilliant how I can control it using the tiles. I don't need a remote. Have you got a Lego model that you'd like to sort of semi-automate in this way, or just control with the Raspberry Pi build hat? Let me know on the Element 14 community if you're going to do this, if you're going to try it with a different model. Let me know what you think of this project. But for now, that's all. So I'll see you next time. Bye.